You spend the next hour arguing the minute differences between ales and lager with the donkey. Although he's reticent to admit it, you are the superior being in this argument. This is one mean-looking tiger. My advice, don't piss it off. What are you, some absolute fucking idiot? You rub your hands all over yourself like a showgirl. You think about an alternative career, should the need arise.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, I am SocioPsycho, and this is Mob Reviews, and today we're going to take a look at Quest for Infamy. This was created by Infamous Quest, available for PC and Linux. It is a spiritual successor, and I don't say that lightly, and I really do mean spiritual successor, to a Quest for Glory point-and-click open-world adventure RPG. Does it hit all the nuances that it needs to? Does it really impact and have the same weight and depth behind as the classics that we've come to love? Well, let's find out, and we'll begin in the options menu. Now, the options menu is very simplistic, as you would see in this style of game. You have the speed of the game, which adjusts pretty much just the movement speed throughout the world. So if you want to get through pretty faster, it's doable. You have the music, which is just amazing. This game easily has one of the best musical soundtracks, not only because the music really impacts well throughout the game, but it places and syncs up perfectly step for step throughout your entire adventure. It's not just 6 or 7 songs which replay on a repeating loop. No, the music in this game actually varies upon what you do, where you are. There was a point I was stealthing in a building, but if I normally walked across the room, the music kept a little simplistic, but if I crept, I used my stealth ability, every step added a new instrumental sound to the music. And so it's these little nuances throughout the game and the variables of which zones are associated with which music that really impact how well the game hits it off. This is a concept that not even AAA companies or larger studios really get. Having the music being not only a background addition, but having it become part of the experience, having the music engulf the player into the adventure is something that few do, and this game has really hit it on the nose. And I don't usually talk about music this much, but that's how good the music in this game is and how well synced up it is. When it comes to the FX sounds I found not to be overly loud, as you have a slider, so that's very much appreciated, and they're pretty simplistic. Speech, the same thing with speech, adjustable, and the majority of the speech is done very well, though there is definitely a wide berth of different accents in the speech category. The accents and the voice actors they use vary from highly professional, which take up more of the main character roles, to just somebody with a mic, but those characters are very few and far in between, and what lines they have don't really matter at all. But the variable of accents in this game, majority being European, a few United States American accents, a few more Southern American accents, it fits all in appropriately to not have too much of one unless you find the narrator annoying, upon which point you could just turn speech off, or you can turn voice and text off, which is very nice. You have this option to either just turn off the voice and have text only, or have voice only and have no text, or have them both. So it's really up to the immersion that you want to have, and it doesn't restrict you in that aspect, which I greatly appreciate. When it comes to the difficulty of the game, you only have 2 choices, normal and easy. I never found it to be a problem, as combat is a supplement in this game. It's not something that is really meant to be a really hard-hitting mechanic of the game, so I would have probably liked a harder difficulty, as there were some points where I found it too easy, but at the same time, the way the story is moved and the whole atmosphere and story ties around an adventure and a scoundrel, not a barbarian or warrior swinging his sword around the map. So it's understandable and acceptable, and it fits in without too much issue. Also, when it comes to performance, the game's been running easily between 30 and 50 frames per second. Now, the game is a 16-bit and it does not have a full screen resolution or style because it's 16-bit. So that's a little unfortunate on that side. Did I ever found that the screen resolution where it has black borders to be overly annoying? No, I didn't. And it didn't draw me out of the immersion aspect of the world, but it was a little unfortunate. I have also not suffered any performance issues. I've had no tearing, clipping, or crashing. It's run perfectly fine with no problems on that regard. So when we jump in here, the first thing we're going to look at is the interface. Now it's your standard interface for a point and click, and if you haven't played games like King's Quest or Quest for Glory back in the 90s, which is understandable if you're new to this genre, simple interface, you have your right mouse button and left mouse button to interact with the world and change up the devices that you want. Now this game has a ploy in between an adventure sense and a combat sense. So when we go up to a top bar, you have your different movement speeds and styles, basic walk, stealth, and running. You can look, touch, and talk, and combat, all things you can easily switch in between. I have not had any issues in that regard whatsoever. Your inventory with all your items in your inventory, and there will be times where you do need to combine items, but the thing that I like about this game versus some other point and clicks is that there are so many items in the game, but the majority of them are pretty useless. There may be a situation where food might be useful, such as if we go to this tiger and we wake this tiger up, then if we don't feed the tiger, he's going to eat us. So if we back up a little bit, pull out our inventory and give him some ham, and now we're able to get away from the tiger. So there are environmental ploys when it comes to the interface in conjunction to your items. So the items are not just, oh, have this one item and combine it with this other item and then combine it with this third item and look at you, you made a tractor and now we're going to plow through a gate. You know, it's not some MacGyver shit like that. Combinations make sense. There might be one thing you overlook, which is very simple to do because there are hints throughout the game, but if you tear off and don't listen to somebody or you miss some little hint that somebody gives you about an item, then it could end up being problematic as you're searching around for the solution because you're not aware you have it in your inventory or some variable. So it's not just a simple matter of combining items in the inventory, but also using items together and understanding that which items you use may or may not have an impactful effect on the world. And I appreciate that. It gives it a depth of choice upon where not everything you have is going to be of use. You have your stats, your weapon hit, and the types of hits that you have, hacking, stabbing, or slashing. These each give a benefit bonus damage depending on which creature you end up fighting. You have blocking. Now blocking will return 5 points of health to you, as we see here my health, and we'll go more into that in a moment. And you have mystical power, so if you're a mage you're able to gain some mystical power. If you're a thief, then you have stealth and thievery, and climbing is a base stat for everybody. You also have the sundial, which allows you to rest between different types of the day and see morning, evening, and night. You have your spell book as a mage, which is a catalation of the spells you have. So as you can see, the interface is actually very well balanced and very well done. I've never found an issue with it whatsoever. It stays true to the older genre, and I enjoyed it. So let's talk briefly about the characters. Now as you see, we're going to start with the warrior, because the warrior is very simplistic. The warrior will have more health than the other characters. They have 80 health to begin with, where the other characters only have 50. The difference from a game like this, from Quest for Glory, is that when you start your character, you don't choose where to put ability points, and you don't start as a mage, a warrior, or a rogue. In the first chapter, you pick that specialization, and the story does incorporate that as you progress forward, as there are different class story elements throughout the game. So the warrior, or the brigand in this game, has their own storyline and their storyboard and their own quests different than the other two. But when it comes to combat, the combat for the warrior is very simplistic. It's just a hack and slash. It is, like in all games, the easiest one to play if you're new to this sort of environment, as there's really no responsibility or position that needs to be held during combat. It's pretty much a DPS fight. You don't have to worry about balancing a certain role. and the fighter will give you the health needed if you're not too keen or enjoyable of a combat element. It gives you that buffer. When it comes to the rogue, which is a little bit more advantageous, the rogue can avoid combat by throwing a dagger at the opponent and stunning them. They can either choose to kill him afterwards or leave the zone. But a rogue's main strength is the different characteristics such as thievery and stealth. Stealth is pretty easy to acquire as you just walk around in stealth mode, and during time it will raise up. This is the same way with climbing in combat. Everything that your skill abilities acquire are gained through the level usage of using those abilities, which is really nice. You don't see that too often in modern games. The one thing I don't like about the rogue is that the rogue's opportunity to really immerse the player into the world is vast, but they don't fully go all out. There are plenty of doors in the kingdom that are 3 bolted shut, meaning that the locks are too difficult even for somebody with 100% thievery to actually be able to steal or break into those homes. In this regard, I would have liked to see some variation of depth. Maybe guards or patrols in those homes, or some different unique aspect to make them harder, rather than just, hey, you can't go in here. And when it comes to lock picking, the majority of the locks in the game that you can unlock are very simplistically just bringing a toolkit item over the door and unlocking it if you have the correct skill level. There will be a few tumbler doors, which are not difficult at all and really don't add much gameplay, as it's just a spam, click, and move a mouse. Really, the only element in the game that actually added a little bit of difficulty was the bank vault, which was a Simon Says game where you have to match the colors to the same pattern in a sequence. Beyond that, I was very disappointed in the actual depth that the rogue was able to incorporate into the world. For if you have 100 stealth or more, depending if you have some bracers which give up an additional stealth, if we look here, the bracers give me even more stealth, which means I'll have 110 stealth. Now, as a warrior, if I'm playing the game through a warrior, I like to just destroy everything and be some bloodthirsty monster. But if I'm going to play like a rogue, I really want to be engulfed into that world, and I want to feel in every aspect that I'm a rogue. And I can't do that when I'm told that there are certain doors I'm unable to unlock. And I can't steal from shops multiple times even though I don't get caught. And to even make it worse, that I can't go in to shops at nighttime. There's a great limited variable to where you can go or what you can unlock as a thief, which makes it really annoying as the world doesn't feel like it's your playground. And this factor is only made worse when you come to the combat element, because when you go into a zone, there's about a 3 to 5 second pause before an enemy will attack you if there is an enemy on that individual map. Now, I don't mind the enemy coming over and attacking, but as soon as your time limit runs up, you cannot move or continue to move, and you're automatically placed in combat as the creature will come up to you. I would have liked to see 2 things happen in this regard. I would have liked to see 1, only upon once the monster touches me will I engage in combat, allowing me more time to escape if that's what I wish it, and 2, the ability as a thief to use stealth through these zones, allowing me to sneak by my enemy, him unaware, given high enough stealth versus his maybe awareness check or something like that. Why I say this is immersion breaking is because while you are a thief and you are capable of stealthing through these zones, and if you have a high enough stealth, you won't actually come across any enemies. But instead of it actually feeling like you're a badass rogue stealthing through the land and past enemies, it comes more to your stealth ability just prevents any enemies from spawning on the map that you walk onto. And that doesn't give you the same feeling of stealth and sneakiness as it would if there was an enemy that you could literally sneak by versus just no enemy in visual. This is sort of balanced out if you're a mage and you come to a map and you need to explore that zone or that map for something. You do have a spell which is Intense Fear. This Intense Fear spell will scare anybody away on that map and make them just run to a new area.
If you please, I'm sure you know the drill. Your purse, valuables, etc., etc. But we have to get nasty.
Yeah, you don't want to see Lobo get nasty.
crap! What in the hell was that?
I just pissed myself and crapped in my trousers.
Let's get out of here! Lobo is not for you!
Whoever was here is not here now. They're fleeing in absolute terror. Nice work.
There are a variable of different spells, which you have, and you learn these spells by acquiring goods. It's not just like learning them from a scroll when we come to the mage. The mage relies on spell power. And you have a couple different spells, which will either help you unlock some basic locks. You won't be able to unlock in the game as many locks as the rogue can, but you do have some environmental move-arounds throughout the game to allow your character to feel like they're the character. You come across a very flimsy door, you can unlock it. You're not strong like a warrior, so you can't bash through it. You're not clever and nimble like a rogue, so you can't lockpick it, but you have a spell which can do it if you have high enough magical power. And the same thing goes with a floating cloud. If you need to get somewhere high up, you can just cast a floating cloud to do so. And enemies in your way, cast terror, or grab an inanimate object. The spells come down to simply fire, ice, fear, whirlwind, and healing. It's very simplistic, and the mage is actually the strongest class in the game, although the character combat isn't really anything intense. The boss fights in the game aren't going to be a problem for any of the classes in between the healing potions you can take, the experience you should have and able to handle the fight once you arrive to it, but the mage class definitely does make it the most simplistic, I do think, as you can easily heal yourself in 2 ways and continuously damage the enemy. The spells are nice, and they add a level of depth for the mage and make the mage feel more well-rounded, as you don't expect to have a sort of more open environment as the mage or the warrior as you do with a rogue. So with the warrior and the mage, I feel they've done very well in not only how you gain new skills or how you acquire these spells and the tasks that you need to do such, the items that you need to collect in order to learn the spell, but also how they interact with the world. The only character I was disappointed in was the rogue. Which brings us to the level design. The level design of a game is open world, and you definitely don't see that element in a point and click very often. At best, you might get a map on the screen and a few zones which you can go to and then bounce in between those areas. This is a open world. There are 2 major towns. There's large ass wilderness. There's a northern wilderness, there's a southern wilderness, there's a graveyard. There's a huge mine area. The level design is definitely open world, and in between that open world there are items which you need to progress. There's a lot of items which you don't know that you may need or are irrelevant to your class, and you end up picking up these items and never using them, and that's not a negative factor. It adds a level of depth which I really like. There are even puzzles which tie into the open world design, which is greatly appreciated. There is a section where you have to go to a mine. Well, it's more of a side quest, but it's something that helps progress forward the story. And in this mine, which is an old dwarven mine, it's fairly large and can be very confusing. I like this fact that they have this very large mine system that you have to navigate around in order to find the objectives that you're looking for. My biggest fault about this is the fact that you can find a map that depicts within reason. It's not a clairvoyant, here you are, here's where this is, and hand walk you to your zone. But it's a map of the mines nonetheless. I would have respected the game a lot more if it went a little bit more old school in that regard and said, if you want to get through these mines because you're getting confused or getting lost, then you need to grab a piece of paper and write down each location as a box for box area and build out your own map on a piece of paper. I would have respected the game a lot more for that, and I feel that because they didn't do it, it was a wasted opportunity. Did it destroy the gameplay? No, but did it hurt in the whole true sense of old school point and click adventure? Yeah, it did. Enough to destroy or not warrant the game's purchase? No, it was just a minor missed opportunity. The thing I love about this is the fact that even though this is a 16-bit 2D game, it has a day and night cycle. And the difference for each map having a afternoon, a morning, and a night, and the environment of the creatures that come out during these times add a huge level of depth to the world, something that you don't see very often. If you play a larger AAA game and you go through a zone in the daytime, in that large AAA zone there might be skeletons, and if you go through nighttime there might be skeletons. But there's no variable, and it doesn't really mix it up, where here you can feel the different areas have their own different personalities, and beyond just having their own personalities, it's also related to a time of day. This adds a huge level of depth, and it's not just seeing the monsters, but also how you interact with your world. Shops are closed that you may need to get into to buy something at nighttime. There are certain areas that are harder to see in, or you aren't able to travel in because there's no natural light to get in there. The only time I found the day and night cycle to be frustrating ties into the story. So in the story, you have this experience where you are a scoundrel. You're not a hero, you're not a proud, dungeon-seeking adventurer. You are a scoundrel, true and through. And you're more out for yourself, but that doesn't mean that you're rude or an asshole. You just don't really care because it's too much of a bother half the time to deal with people's problems. This is met with a huge comic relief and mocking satire throughout the game. This is easily one of the funniest point-and-click adventures that I've played in a long time, if not altogether. But as you play as this rogue, towards the end of the game, there is a battle scene which happens. And if this battle scene happens at the main city during the nighttime, you are unable to talk to the alchemist in order to get some smoke bombs because it's nighttime. So you have to rest for it to become daytime in order to get the smoke bombs and able to get through the point of combat. While I applaud the fact that you want this diversity in the game, it's an oversight. They should have, after Chapter 3 began, they should have made sure that the alchemist was able to be awoken, or he is awake, in his shop even at nighttime. In case you end up in that situation at night, you're not torn out of the realism of the environment because now I have to wait 8 hours and then go back to a battle which looks exactly the same, like it's never even progressed in 8 hours. There are not too many situations where the environment actually kicks its own butt in the story in its logical or illogical sense. But a few times it does happen, once to maybe 3 times, it really hurts the game hard. Now this is definitely shown in the beginning of the story. The story progression of the game starts off pretty well. You have a prelude if you want to watch it, and then you start off in town. And the first few events in the town where it's like, okay, this is what's happening, the map is sort of limited, I understand it opens up very fast, and I get the understanding of who's in the town, the characteristics, and everything else. But what happens then is it just throws you into this world, and it opens up a little too early, I think. Because you find out that the majority of the time needs to be spent with picking your subclass and following that subclass chainline rather than the real adventure or problem that's going on here. As for mage, it came down more to a tedious task management of finding items for my spells, but not really understanding what the main point of the story was, or really what the progression was supposed to be. And as I did eventually find out, this was only met by the fact that, I need to talk to this one person at this one time of day in this one location, but I wasn't even aware of that. So a lot of it does come down to a sort of random chance element. And yes, there are areas where you can talk to somebody and they can give you that hint or that clue, that direction that you need to talk to that person. This coupled in with the fact that there's no journal system, even a very base journal, just to keep a fundamental system on what's happened or a certain direction, kind of makes you feel at times like, wait, what am I supposed to be doing? So if you, say, have a horrible memory, or you come back playing after 2 days or something, and you go to pick back up, and you're like, wait, what am I supposed to be doing? Where am I supposed to be going? What's going on here? In the beginning, the first chapter, not as many clues to progression and continuation of the story. Now, in the second element of the game, and even the third chapter, it really buckles down and gives you clear tasks to figure out, understand, puzzles to get through, and the story progresses in a very excellent manner. I'm not saying that the open world is a bad thing. I'm just saying that the story, the way it was written, in the beginning can be very confusing to somebody who's new to this world, trying to figure out the ropes, understand the interface, and where to go and what they need to do, need a little bit more of a hand-holding in the story, a clear direction. And then, after chapter 1, I think it should have opened up and maybe be a little bit more vague, or been a little bit more curious in some regards, and maybe player have to work through a little bit more. And then chapter 3 can sort of balance it out and as a reward for not being too over difficult or tedious, and sort of escort you to your final destination, like they do currently. So I think the level story progression of chapter 1 and 2 should have been switched in some base elements of how you interact with the world, as it can be slightly confusing. But what I love, not only in between the story and the level design of the game, is that it rewards you for exploration. It definitely rewards you, and it doesn't hold your hand. Now, what I mean by not holding your hand is that yes, you will gain cues and hints and tips upon what you need to do. But it's up to you to find these items and combine these items and say, oh, I need to make fish oil. I found a fish. Now I need a glass. Now I need to squeeze the fish into the glass. There's a lot of different variables that come to the game which really give it a lot of depth. And this sort of depth is definitely portrayed in the many lines of dialogue that you come across as really well voice acted. And I'll let you hear that for yourself now.
I grow a lot of my own reagents, but I'm always on the lookout for some of the harder to find items. I will always be able to buy tufts of wolf's fur and the venom sac from giant snakes if you can get them.
Ah, well, when I got to the bridge, it was all washed away. The man up there said it'd be out for a few more weeks while the king assembled a team to fix it.
Being the magnanimous gentleman I am, I've already taught you the first level of flaming vengeance. However, I don't have the reagents to give you for the rest. You need to obtain them yourself, and I can create and teach you the spells.
You're being awfully generous, Mr. Magic. What's the catch?
You're quite clever, Mr. Brown. Let's just say I have some jobs I need completed. But I know that you would never survive these tasks if I didn't instruct you first.
What are you doing?
I'm shaking the shit out of you.
Well, stop!
What business have you here?
Well, you know, obviously I was looking for you.
Lucky for you, I'm out here.
I know. Saves me time having to search for you.
Very funny, sir.
I aim to please.
We're pursuing a dangerous group of criminals that were trying to smuggle in illegal shipments from the port. The gates will remain closed until we apprehend them.
You turn the door handle and walk inside. My God, it's an amazing hub of commerce. Workers stack crate after crate of supplies, and there are many exotic shipments in the gigantic storage space. The ceiling is huge, and you can see the storage space actually goes underground. You head down into the catacombs with the worker you've befriended. Mirren shows you the hidden part of Tyr, where the men party and relax, and the women dance freely without cares. The people here are kind and beautiful, and you find yourself involved in a physical tryst with a woman from a far-off land. The experience you two share is beyond words, and when she leaves to return to her homeland, you know you'll always hold a piece of her inside. As you make your way up from the catacombs, you look around, incredulous at the secret life that lives beneath this great city. Unfortunately, we can't actually show you any of that, as we don't have that kind of budget. But hey, at least I told you. So, in the interest of preserving your sanity, let's just say the door is locked.
So at the end of the day, how does it all sum up? Performance has been great, no issues in that regard. Interface has been very clean and slick, no problems. The character creation, very minimalistic. You have a sub-choice to go off of after a while, upon where the warrior is just the warrior, the mage has a utility of spells, and the rogue, which is supposed to be more freedom-based because you're not going to be overly engaged in fighting as a rogue or the rogue mentality, and that really lacks. The rogue definitely is the weakest of the classes when it comes to the enrichment of the character, the playability, and the story, which is definitely unfortunate. The level design is wonderful. I love the open world. I love the fact that you can go where you need to, and it has an explorational aspect which is rewarded upon knowledge found and items properly used. It's not just combine 2 items and you're good to go. No, it's how do these items work together? How does this make sense? And what is the flowation throughout the game in between the world, my items, the story, and my character? And the story itself, holy crap, the story had me laughing here and there at serious times. And there were also times where the story just took me back and I was like, what? No. Because the game does go a little bit more old school. There are a few chapter quick saves, but if you lose progress because you died, then that's on you. And I respect the game for that. It's on you to save your progress as you make progress. And it's one of the few games, especially in these modern days, where I came up to the end of a game, the end story happened, and I was just, whoa. I thought to myself, if there was a second game that was made and out, I would buy that right now. The story was beautifully executed and well done, minus the first few difficult stumbles of character progression in the first chapter, which eventually gets smoothed out as the game progressed. So yes, ladies and gentlemen, if this game is too expensive at its current price point of $20 for you, then definitely get it on sale. But if $20 is acceptable for this sort of experience, which I highly recommend, then pick it up today because it is worth it. You'll easily get 20 plus hours depending on how many achievements you want to go for and how many times you want to replay to experience the game in slightly different ways. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for listening and watching. I've been SocioPsycho, this has been Mob Reviews, and I'll see you next time.